one of my favorite books of all time, the Tao Te Ching, written 2,500 years ago by Lao Tzu. The book is a genie in a bottle, and you just open these pages and magically the genie grants your wishes. Daoism is an ancient Chinese philosophy and spiritual tradition that emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao, which means the way or the path. It originated around the 4th or 3rd century BC. To really dive deep in the Tao Te Ching, there's core concepts that we need to cover, and those are the Tao, which is the way, WOAY, which is non-action, Yin and Yang, which symbolizes balance, and simplicity and spontaneity. First, let's start with the concept of the way. You know, my band, present tense, wrote a song called The Way, and it was hearkening back to the Tao Te Ching, to the way, which is actionless doing, which is non-doing, which is allowing, and living in oneness and contentment, and allowing the divine mind and the divine consciousness to serve you and to give you ultimately what you're focused on, and getting out of the duality of haves and have-nots, or abundance and scarcity. It's just living in this actionless freedom. It's almost like water. Water is used in the Tao Te Ching so much. Because you think of water, it's one of the softest substances in the world, but it also can break down the hardest rock. Look at the Grand Canyon. I mean, that was carved over centuries through, and look how high that Grand Canyon is. The softest substance, like water, can be the most powerful. And the way is just like that. So concept number 2 is WOAY, which means non-action, which we just kind of covered. But it's difficult as human beings living in this world. I mean, it sounds campy, you've heard it 100 times, but we're not human doings, we're human beings. Well, when you want to attract something in your life and you have to detach from the action, it's difficult because we're in this physical time, we're in this physical body. You know, we have bills to pay, we have appointments, we have kids and parents and grandparents and spouses to take care of. Look how water flows. I mean, all of the rivers, right? They do all their bidding to get to the lowest spot in the planet, which is the ocean. 70% of the world is water. We are 70% water. That's the WOAY, that's the actionless doing, that's a detachment from outcome. That's just allowing all the flowing to happen and just lie low, be humble, be content. And in that non-action, the abundance will flow to you because you'll be acting like the source. The third concept is Yin-Yang, harmony and balance, right? There's a dark and there's a light. How do they create this circle? But it takes both of them to complete this balance. You can't just have one outweighing the other. And that's why female energy is yin and male energy is yang. There's like a polarity shift, right? There's a polarity balance that we all need in our lives. And when you can find that balance in your life, your timing is good. Your outcomes are detached. You can serve people. You can come from a place of not hoarding and having all this stuff and not giving it away. If you want more abundance, you give it away. It's so counterintuitive, but that is the balancing act we go through once again. The 81st verse of the Tao Te Ching: the sage does not hoard. The more he helps others, the more he benefits himself. The more he gives to others, the more he gets himself. The way of heaven does one good, but never does one harm. The way of the sage is to act, but not to compete. So the 81st verse is truly one of my favorite because 8 in 1. 8 is the infinity symbol. And then 1, the number 1, one divine source, one moment in time. NOW spelled backwards is one. It's also a homonym, one, infinite oneness. This 81st verse speaks so much of what it means to be a giver, to not hoard. And when I live that way, avalanches of abundance come into my life, emotionally, socially, spiritually, financially. I can't even tell you, living this way, living the 81st verse. So the final concept of the Tao Te Ching today is simplicity and spontaneity. How do you become simple? Lao Tzu was so simple. He had one braid down. He dressed with sandals and clothes that looked like they were rags. He was just a simple man. You think of Jesus. Jesus was just in a simple robe. But in the moment, they would heal people, cure people, inspire people in their spontaneity. So I want you to feel inspired and be open. If you have the eyes of awareness to see, there'll be people there to serve. So in that spontaneity, you can find what the person is looking for, how you feel inspired to help them or serve them. Your intuition, your gut, follow that. That's how you have simplicity and spontaneity all in one moment. You know, in the book, Lao Tzu talks about the 10,000 things, which are the stuff, the things we are part of the 10,000 things. And he also talks about the concept of being zero. that balancing point where you're not attached to things. You're not attached to outcomes. You're not attached to the ego. It's about being simple and low, like I talked about earlier in the video, about being like the ocean. It lies low and everything else comes to it. If you can be zero and not be one of the 10,000 things, you get the 10,000 things. That's the great rub of this book that I've read and experienced and lived in my life. I'm not a Tao master, but I'm aspiring to be like the Tao teaches, like Lao Tzu, to be simple, to be detached, to give, to act like the sun. I just love this poem from Hafiz. He says, after all this time, just look at the sun. The sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Just look what a love like that does. It lights the whole sky. Dr. Wayne Dyer wrote his version of the Tao Te Ching. It's called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao Te Ching. I recommend you get his book.